Okay, so you're one of our members, and I'm taking this opportunity just to have a bit of a chat to you about what you do, and why you're training with us.
Sure, okay. So very briefly, I am a martial artist, and I think I use that term very broadly, is that I do love all things that are military and combat related, but I also love the artistic side to it. So for me, my journey in martial arts started when I was probably around about 8, watching Jackie Chan and Bruce Lee movies. And that for me was martial arts, being able to fly through trees and kick 100 men with a single kick type of thing. But gradually, as I grew older and a little bit more wise as to what martial arts were, I I had dabbled in quite a lot of martial arts to a point where I could say I had 11 black belts. I do have 11 black belts. Five of which are in Kendo. So I'm a fifth dan in Kendo. It's my highest ranking martial art. So I've been doing it for a while, but I've also done things like Korean martial arts, Hapkido and Taekwondo, which are kicking and joint locks. I'm a Krav Maga instructor as well, which is the Israeli Defense Forces martial art, which is more practical self-defense stuff. I've done things like amok and knife fighting, which is, again, defensive, but using purely blades and bladed weapons. And I've done also Chinese martial arts like Wing Chun, Tai Chi, and a bit of Qigong exercise. So those are all Chinese martial arts, which I've also incorporated into my martial arts training, my martial arts journey. So Kendo specifically works or uses a sword or a representation of a sword, a bamboo sword. And we wear the full armor, which is called a bogu, a headgear, which protects your head, gauntlets that protect your wrist, and a torso part called a door, which protects your torso, and then a tare, which protects the sort of the groin area. So being a sword art, we don't go to the ground, but the intention is if you come close to me, I should be able to cut you down. That's what Kendo entails.
Okay.
But Kendo over the years, over the centuries, has developed from a martial practice on the battlefield to more of a philosophical and spiritual practice, where the whole ethos and motto about Kendo now is development of yourself through the application of the sword. And that is something which is, through using a sword, you learn to control yourself better. All right.
Okay.
And that is sort of Kendo's philosophy. There is a sporting element to it, and I'll show you a few clips of Kendo as a sport where there's competition, there's a winner and loser, and it's very fast, very dynamic, very energetic. And then there's also the more, like I said, the philosophical and spiritual side of Kendo, where it takes it to a different level, understanding yourself deeper. If I can spend a bit more time on that, and because that's really important, is things like, facing someone on a battlefield, or what we call a Shiai Jo, a competition area, someone who's willing to, just as much as you are, willing to strike you down with this sword, with a bamboo sword, elicits a lot of fear, hesitation, doubt, and anxiety. Those 4 feelings or those 4 emotions is what we call the shikai, the 4 poisons of the mind. And by having that environment where you can experience those, there's no other feeling that you can feel. Is this whole deep thing of understanding yourself. You can understand those fears and how to overcome them in a battle context. You can take that same kind of teachings and use it outside in the outside world. That's the benefit of being able to do Kendo in the longer term. Does it make sense? So have you ever heard of this analogy, especially in martial arts? It's called the unification of body, mind, and spirit, right? So all three things need to be in line or in sync. And this is my take on it, is for you to get to the higher levels of martial arts, the philosophical side, you've got to first master your body. So, exactly as I'd like to think, in your sports and your strength and conditioning class, you've got to learn the basic movements of being able to do let's call it a clean or a clean jerk. So I can say that because I still struggle with it, but you need to be able to master the technical, physical ability first. Once you've got that, it becomes more of a mental game. That's the mind part. Once you can get that physical part out and you can do it almost effortlessly, physically, then you need that mental capacity to say, okay, I can push through this barrier that I have. I can only do 80 kilos. I can do 100 kilos. Same in Kendo. All right, you need to be able to master the physical first before it can become a mental aspect. All right. And then lastly, once you get past those first two hurdles, then it becomes the art, becomes the philosophy. Now you can understand, why do I feel fear of being able to break 100? It's because no one's done it before. Is it a new record for myself? That's the emotion and the spiritual side that you work on. So it is a process, and you can only get there through consistent and long-term training. And it's the same with martial arts. You know, most people look at martial arts and say, listen, when I get to black belt, then I would have accomplished it. No, black belt's just your beginning, because you've mastered the basics of being able to control your body and your mind first. Then the black belt goes onwards to say, okay, now that you've got these tools, let's make something out of it. Let's make something bigger that you can, whatever you can create. That's the art part. And that's why I see when I do strength and conditioning with you, I've got to master those basic techniques. Just doing something as simple as a deadlift without killing myself or hurting my back. If I can't do that, physically I failed. I can't carry on. But once I've done that, then it's the mental aspect of saying, okay, I've done 160 now, I'm pushing for 165 next. The mental, and then later on it becomes, yes, you know, I can really do this from a spiritual, emotional perspective. I'm pushing for 180, and geez, this is my personal best. That is more mental, more spiritual and emotional. So it is a process, and that's how I see it from a Kendo perspective as well.
Okay, and you go through all of these sort of aspects with your students,
Yes.
sort of as they go along, and
look, I think that's, as a teacher, as a sensei, that's where I need to use my judgment, my experience. There are some students that, you know, for instance, my younger students, they need that hard physical, rigorous training first. You know, trying to talk to them about more emotional and mental stuff, it's wasted on them. So I need to use my skills as a teacher. And if you're at this level in your life where you have the capabilities, you're young, you're fit, let's push as hard as I can push you to a point where you're breaking. Now that you're breaking mentally, that's where we start working on the mental part. We start working on the mind. Okay. So my skill as a sensei is to be able to recognize that in my students and say, listen, this person needs this right now. You know, my oldest student is 58, I think, 58. You know, I can't push him as hard as I would with my younger students, but I give him then that mental aspect. Say, listen, this is why we're doing it. At your age, even if you get to 300 cuts for that night, that's good. All right. Because for you at your age, this is what you need. And then we do it reversely. We do it the opposite way. Okay. We do the mental aspects first, getting through that self-doubt, you know, the emotions. Oh, well, I'm 58, I'm old, I can't do it. No, you're not. You're midway through your life. Then we work backwards. So the body, mind, and spirit works in a triangle. Right? Each three sides is what you need to make this triangle strong. Sometimes you focus on the physical, sometimes you focus on the mental, and other times you focus on the philosophical or the spiritual side. But the idea is to unify that body, mind, and spirit. You need all three sides. They're just at different stages. For me, the easiest part is always, because it's a physical art, we start with the physical, but we work throughout the entire triangle. It's like deadlifts. You know, before you go to competition, you need to keep repeating it, get the technique right, start loading on mass. You know, you do more reps, you do more. It's exactly the same training. We train a lot of the basics, so that when we have to, we can combine them all, and obviously use them in that, you know, that split second that we need it. And that's Kendo. You know, most people say, well, what happens if you do that? I say, well, then you just go back to the next training session and keep on training. That's the martial arts.
Exactly.
You know?
Exactly. Yeah. And are there lots of competitions in South Africa for people to take part in, or is it more sort of an international competition stage?
So in South Africa, we're still quite a niche sport, even though we've been around, the federation's been around for over 25 years already. It's still a very small number, just over 100 participants. And of those, only a very small handful are really active competitors as such. So, you know, that's why we do travel a lot overseas to, you know, train and to compete. Every year, we have a national team that either takes part in the European Kendo Championships or in the World Kendo Championships. And there you have a couple thousand people competing. And there you'll see the difference. You know, I mean, because we don't have enough competition experience here in South Africa or Africa, our level is sort of down here, where you see the international entities, because they have so much experience competing, they're much higher. So we've got a steep curve to sort of reach, but doesn't stop us from having to train consistently. We're still valuing a lot of value in, the training. The competition is a small aspect of it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And when you train the physical side of it, besides training obviously the movement skills,
Yes.
what other physical aspects do you concentrate on when you train?
Okay.
What
So
would be important?
yeah. So we've always said to our students, don't come to Kendo to get fit. Get fit to come to Kendo. And the idea is in Kendo, you should be doing, even though we do some very basic stretches and a little bit of cardio, we're learning very specific Kendo skills and very Kendo techniques. So I do encourage a lot of my students to say, listen, still do something outside of Kendo, whether it's, and this is a big one for me now, strength training, because I'm getting to age where I can feel my muscle mass, lessening or getting not as dense as it used to be. So that's where the strength training really helps complement my martial arts. I need to have that muscle mass to be able to swing my sword, even though it's only half a kilo. After about 1,000 or so cuts, it becomes kind of heavy. So I need that strength. I need the endurance. All right. So that's where the cardio comes in, and I need the flexibility and the mobility so that I don't injure myself when I'm training Kendo. I'm sure I've got very stiff shoulders. I've had shoulder injuries in the past, and that's from the repetitive motion of just doing one cut 1,000 times. All right, I need something to sort of break that sort of repetitiveness, so that I've still got full flexibility, full range of motion in my shoulders, and that's where mobility and flexibility is also very important. I've only realized this in the last year or two, as I'm getting older. When you're young, I'm pretty sure you're invincible, you can do anything. But as you get older, you have to be very conscious as to how you train and, supplement where, my martial arts doesn't address. And that's where, you and, the strength and conditioning really helps.
Yeah. You've spoken about the mobility issues in the shoulders, which is kind of a drawback really of specializing in Kendo, because most of the movements are sort of just in one plane.
Yeah.
So if you go anywhere outside of that plane, your shoulders can't handle it because they're not used to actually the full range of movements. So when people are looking to do conditioning outside of Kendo, like you were saying, they need to get fit for Kendo, not do Kendo to get fit. They shouldn't only look at what they must do to enhance what they're doing in Kendo, but also what Kendo will be almost kind of limiting in them.
Absolutely.
To try and stop that as well.
Yeah, I think a big wake-up call for me was when we did pull-ups. You made us do pull-ups, right? Like I can feel my downward pull is very strong, but lifting myself up, which is a different movement entirely from Kendo. I'm so weak on my back muscles and my shoulders at the back. And it has gotten a little bit better with some of the exercises you've given me. But, things like that where I think, my personal opinion, it has to be holistic. The whole body can't only work in one way. It has to be a holistic sort of view as to how the whole body works. And I think that's what, you offer. You can sort of see where the gaps are and help me fill in those gaps to sort of help enhance not only my Kendo, but for my general health and fitness as a whole.
Yeah,
so that's
absolutely.
Because
in the bigger picture, you've got to also be able to live a life outside of Kendo as well.
Absolutely.
If you do things and it's going to tax your shoulders in a way that they can't handle, you're going to end up with injuries. And like you say, you've got a 5-year-old son. You want to play with your 5-year-old son as well. If he gets you to do things or asks you to do things that suddenly you find you're not able to, it's going to be a bit harsh.
Absolutely. And I think you also touched on something very, very importantly, very briefly, is that I've got to have energy for him, So, I can't be, at the end of it, be so exhausted that I can't move my limbs and I can't play with him. So, anyone that has a 5-year-old, these guys are boundless amount of energy. So I have to have the right amount of energy as well to sort of keep up with him. And he's still young, so I want to be a parent that I'll still be able to play with him until I can, as long as I can.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Oh. So right at the beginning, you were saying that you also do a lot of self-defense type of thing, and you've actually got a self-defense business.
Yes, yes.
So maybe you can just talk a bit about what
Mhm.
that entails.
Okay, so when I teach self-defense, there's three very important things that I teach. Number one is the skills training, all right? The actual self-defense, kicking and punching stuff. But we also do the softer skills, which is understanding sort of the psychology of self-defense, all right? And those are the things where I can sit down, and we had, the first session was sitting down and giving them a presentation about self-defense. One of the things I'll say to them is understanding your primary question. What are you willing to fight, die, and kill for? All right. If you can answer that question with conviction, and you know 99% of the times what it is that you're willing to fight down and kill for, you will keep yourself safe in the most dire of times. Most people or some people get themselves into a lot of trouble because they haven't clearly defined what is it that they're willing to fight for, die for, or kill for. Road rage is a prime example, right? How many incidences have we heard of people losing it on the road? Taxi cuts in front of them, so they run up towards them, they cut the taxi off, get out the car, and get shot with an illegal firearm. All right. He didn't think through as to what is it that he's willing to fight for. He let his ego or her ego get in the way, and now they're injured or dead. So my self-defense courses, I teach them to take that question and understand how to answer it and it's a hard question to answer, because I really hit people hard with this one. But once you understand that, you understand what makes you tick. By understanding that, you'll know what you will fight down and kill for. Then you know what self-defense is about. Then I break it down. There's so much things in for me, and I'm busy writing a book on it. Self-defense has most people, and this is also another thing, I want to change the perception that self-defense is all about kicking and punching. By the time you're kicking and punching, you've missed probably about a dozen steps beforehand. Things like avoiding, things like dodging it. Have you tried negotiating your way out? There's so many other tactics you can use. People always talk about awareness, where you're aware first and foremost that you could have been in danger. Right? I elaborate on that, because awareness is one thing, but there's a whole bunch of other stuff that people don't, that gets neglected if you just do kicking and punching. And that's where my niche falls into, is that I focus not only on the physical aspect, but also the mental aspect of self-defense. Because for me, if you can get past, if you can understand, like I said, what are you willing to fight down and kill for, 99% of the time, you won't have to get into a physical confrontation.
Yeah, that's so interesting.
That is.
Sure.
That gives me
and people forget that they hear self-defense, and all they think about is, like you say, kicking and punching and shooting or slashing your way out or something.
Well, that's the thing, though. And, I particularly tell my students, and that's the fun stuff. When they come to my class, they want to feel that physical aspect. I said it's fun in the classroom, but it's the least fun when you're out there. The boring stuff that we do here, when I ask you this question, is the stuff that's going to save you out on the streets. Don't get involved if you don't have to, okay? And, I think for a lot of people, they obviously like the glam of kicking and punching, and that's what's punted by a lot of self-defense instructors. And, I've seen guys from like huge, humongous guys that are being able to do this. I'm like, but you're 110 kilos. That's easy for you.
Yeah.
I'm a little dinky 70-kilogram guy. Yeah, that doesn't work for me. Okay, I'd rather try to avoid it. I don't care what you think of it, but I'm alive. You might or might not be. So there's a big change in the way I want to teach my self-defense methodology.
Yeah,